Hi everybody, this is Ramanuj from Lawsico, and today we have our guest Anita Kapoor. Anita is somebody who has a lot of experience in different functions, but she has done managerial functions as well as legal functions, and she brings some unique skills and knowledge of automating and creating processes in the legal industry. So, from in-house counsel perspective, from the perspective of practicing lawyers, advocates, law firms, there's a whole lot of areas in which you talk about today about how to create processes. So people talk a lot about automation through softwares, but I think softwares don't really work unless you have processes in place and you have clear goals and understanding of processes. So softwares, a lot of time people buy expensive softwares and it completely does not work because they don't have the processes to support it. So we have been continuously getting a lot of interest from people on how to automate a law firm, how to create systems, how to create more efficiency in their work, and I think it's an area which is extremely interesting right now in India, simply because uh, lawyers have and law firms have started realizing that they stand to gain a lot from this efficiency, and at the same time they do not have very clear pathways to go about it. So I'm hoping that today's discussion with Anita will make a difference here, and I can see a lot of people are watching this live on YouTube also. We just went live on YouTube. So let's proceed. Hi Anita, let's welcome Anita. How are you doing, Anita?
Good, Ramanuj. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for making time. Uh, would you like to, first share your career journey to create a context for what you're going to discuss next?
Sure, sure. So my career journey, I would say is I was fortunate to have multiple different kinds of experiences all through my journey. I have been an in-house counsel. I've been with a law firm, and now I'm running my own law firm. And in all this mix, I already also have about. I also joined the sales team. Outside of legal to get the business view of how things are done, purely because I have worked with the technology and the sales teams for so long that it just seemed to me like a natural transition, or that curiosity in me was high enough for me to actually take that leap. And thankfully, the employers I had previously, I was with Cisco at that time, and there was enough trust built both ways for me to have gotten that chance. So yes, I think I've been fortunate in all this. I am also a CS by education, so it's company secretary and a corporate lawyer. Been doing what I'm doing for about 21 years now. So overall, I have found my space in technology and trying to improve efficiencies in whatever I do, and now in teams that I run with, both ways. So that has helped me in creating that sort of a knowledge base for myself, which I'm happy to be sharing here.
That's such a great career journey. To be honest, I really feel and believe that the more different things you do, you get richer as a professional, and it gives you unique perspectives that others do not have. And I think that's a great advantage professionally. So Anita, if you can tell me, how did you get involved with this efficiency business? Like what started how did you start to think about it, and where did you get an opportunity to work on this?
Yeah. So honestly, it was because of the experience I had with my previous employers, Cisco.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I was just before that I was actually heading the branch, Bangalore branch, for a law firm called Luthra and Luthra. So there I again got involved in the operational aspects of a law firm outside of just being a lawyer in a firm or in an organization. So over there, of course, I started to be more curious about how to get faster with doing some of these routine things, because until then, till most of us think, I was of the opinion that a law as a function is creating something unique, something bespoke every single time,
Mm,
and that's
mm.
not something we
And
replicate.
taking pride in it, right?
Absolutely. And I still take pride in that. But the fact of the
Uh,
matter is that I never really thought that it was law was a profession where processes or standardizations could really be helpful. While I started thinking about that from the operational side of a law firm, but really not as a lawyer or into my professional self.
but
So I
but
thought,
you know, while bespoke is great, just want to address this a little to set context. So you know, if there is a need for uh, you know uh, what do you say, efficiency through creating automation, isn't it because you want to standardize an automation, not because you don't want to do bespoke stuff, but because so that you can do the bespoke stuff where it really matters and not reinvent the wheel where it is unnecessary? Wouldn't you agree?
absolutely, and you're spot on that, Ramanuj. It actually frees up so much more time to do the stuff where you can add more value, rather than getting stuck in piles of paperwork, or just finding an email and basic things like that. So you're spot on. So yeah, so the
And
way
also, why also wasting clients' money and your own resources, right? Like,
Absolutely,
uh,
absolutely. And it frustrates the clients. Even if you're an in-house counsel, you have internal clients. You're delivering to the sales team, the development team, or the procurement team, or if you're in litigation, you have internal clients as well. So it frustrates them too if you are continuously taking more time to respond to them. So yeah, so that was actually the thought that went into what we created in my previous organization, which was more of a central excellence organization within the legal team, because there are and that happens everywhere. I don't think it's unique to any particular organization. It happens everywhere, especially the companies which are spread across various locations, whether geographies or not. Even if they're spread across various locations, it happens that every single resource at some point is overworked and at some point is underworked. So there are times when your efficiency is peaking. There are times when you are feeling low and you're not so productive, not so efficient. So you cannot really hire resources based on that particular, it's not seasonal hiring that legal typically does. So
mm,
so what do? You cannot hire half a lawyer here and half a lawyer in Canada. No. But what you can do is have a central team which can always be ready to take on additional tasks. And over a period, that central team becomes so efficient in performing those tasks that it becomes their forte. They are trained to that extent, they have playbooks to that extent, and they have experience to that extent, so that even even those jobs which they are doing, they become so repetitive and so scalable that they're bringing in the best quality in there. So there was this team called the LSGO originally, but then later the COE, the Center of Excellence for Legal, which was created, which from a 4-member team went on to 25, 30-member team as time progressed. But what they typically do is look at all sorts of jobs, all sorts of legal problems and legal contracts and processes which are replicable, which can actually benefit from a single dedicated set of people looking at it and ensuring that that single dedicated team is trained efficiently in managing that to the best level. To give you an example, something like an approval process, for instance. Uh, a contract goes through various iterations and then has to go through a different set of approval processes to be able to get to the final execution stage. Now, if a lawyer who is front-ending with the customer, front-ending with the internal legal teams, that lawyer is also required to be looking at these approval processes, which are more, process-driven. It takes up more of their time because they're not used to it. Secondly, they don't have enough quality time to sit down and ensure every entry is correct. Right? I'm not saying they'll do it wrong. I'm just saying the chances of them not doing it to their best potential are way higher than someone who has been trained efficiently in doing it and does it day in, day out. They know exactly what to look for in the document, and it goes through like clockwork. So it all started with a concept of, not being able to hire a 0.5 lawyer in different locations, different geographies.
Right.
And it turned out to be a very efficient team of paralegals as well as lawyers who grew over the years to handling complex transactions also, because then we got to a stage where we could actually spot a process in even the most complex things that one would think possible, like even negotiations, for instance.
Right. So give me an example of. Okay. Okay. So I want you to tell me more about this playbook concept and this, But before that, give me an example of how the process of, let's say, reviewing a shareholder agreement could be automated or could be standardized for that.
Okay. So shareholder agreement, let us assume there are four parties, and what does it need? If I just ask you, what would you typically do? You would have a draft in place, and shareholders agreement, that has certain standard clauses.
Right. So you have standard document. Most firms have their standard document.
Most firms have standard documents, but you may not always be representing the side that has drafted, right? You, like, right now, I am representing more founders than VCs. And the founders rarely have an opportunity of dictating the draft. They never hold the pen, right? So still, when something comes to you, you know what is critical in a shareholders agreement. You know what is typical in a shareholders agreement. And we have a list.
So you can have a checklist. Huh?
We can have a checklist for that.
Right. And so every time you're representing a founder, here is a checklist that you minimum this you are going to check it out.
Absolutely. Okay. And it's always beneficial for the client as well, because most of the time the founders or our clients are not fully conversant with what is written there. And we can easily pull out, because of our checklist, we can easily pull out what are the clauses that are going to be affecting their rights, not just now, also in the future. For instance, any dilution provision in the future. Right?
So now imagining this, that as a firm, if we start creating a no-go list and a minimum rights list for founders, and then we keep adding it, of course we'll have learnings as we go, and we keep adding to this list.
Absolutely.
Then it can actually become a very powerful differentiator over time, because it will be like, not only it is saving time, but also there is, even if I hire somebody, I give that person this list, they're going to check this at least. So I mean, I think that makes tremendous amount of sense. I mean,
so what we have to possibly keep in mind is the power that comes to us because of our ability to view multiple forms of the same kind of transaction. So that's the power that we should not be missing out on. So we have different learnings from different kinds of transactions. They may all be shareholders agreement. They may all be Series A or Series B agreements. However,
could be a franchisee agreement, could be any agreement.
It could be any
sale of goods agreement.
Shareholders agreement step forward. Yes, it could be any agreement. But the fact is that as a lawyer, you are in a unique position, whether in-house or an outside counsel. You are in a unique position of being able to see various different views and possibilities, which means that in the next deal for another client, you're able to advise them better, or something that they may not have thought about. But how do you manage all this unless you have a process where things can actually be listed and things can actually be noted down and somebody is taking care of it?
Yeah, it's so funny. I have heard so many times, not funny at all actually. law law my friends in law firms comparing that their juniors forgot to do the compliance and they forgot to file HCPPF form, and I'm sure everybody knows this. The reason it's kind of brings a smile is because the number of times you
Times
have
that
heard
you
this
were,
happening.
yeah,
And it's basically a process failure, that there is no process to check that this gets done.
right.
And do you what how can somebody solve a problem like this, for example?
Yeah, because then if you have a checklist and if you have a set of SOPs, standard operating practices on
Hmm.
where at what step who's supposed to do what, and that's an interesting point that you brought up as well, because I also wanted to touch upon the fact that sometimes if you don't have clarity in the process, it is also possible that there is a lot of duplication. Two people will be working on the same thing, thinking that they are supposed to be giving that out, right? Now what that
Yeah,
leads to is when there are more than one people or one team, if there is no
diffusion
clear
of responsibility.
responsibility,
Hmm.
then it is nobody's problem. So ultimately, when if and when the ball drops, and I'm 100% sure it will,
Yeah,
then nobody can take responsibility. Everyone will step aside. Like the partner will say it was the junior will say I was not instructed. So it's nobody's fault. But who is the ultimate loser in all this? The firm or the client, right?
absolutely,
They will
absolutely.
never come
And
back to you.
yeah, I have seen, and a lot of teams actually have management structures where, you know, multiple people are given responsibility, as if throwing many people on a single thing is going to make the
Yes,
work happen better. And not only that, the person actually who's doing the work would not have any kind of decision making power, and the person who has decision making power would not be doing the work. So it's crazy, like, you know, there's
yes.
completely process failures all around. So why is this the case? Because lawyers don't know management, or they, I mean, why is this happening even in big law firms for that matter?
I think I will go back to where I started, which is to say that most of the time lawyers believe that what they're doing is really unique. And they believe
Hmm.
that it is not something that can be a cookie cutter, right?
uh,
And so that leads to a certain level of reluctance. And this I speak from experience. Like I said, when we were trying to implement the center of excellence in the previous organization, initially there was so much reluctance from the lawyers across the world to actually give or lend work to this specialized team, because a they felt that something was being taken away from them,
mhm.
and b they never believed that anyone can do it better than them,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
And this
Mm.
comes with a certain level of our training, I guess. I mean, we've been trained to believe that we are
And
doing
defend our positions. We're trained to defend our position every time,
absolutely,
right?
yes.
So for tough fights,
So
anybody says anything, right?
true, true. And exactly why we had so much trouble initially. But once you break that mindset, or you let people, you find a few people who are invested in it, and try and experiment with them, it
Mm-hmm.
is surely going to reap some
No,
results.
but at the same time, there's a huge interest to actually, kind of understand how to automate and, standardize processes and how to create efficiency. People are really realizing that there is a great benefit to be, to be had from efficiency.
Absolutely.
So jumping in, what do you think? Like, if I am an independent lawyer, and by the way, like, I'd love to have some questions at this point from the from the any of the people who are watching this uh, on YouTube as well. I'm keeping an eye for comments. So, what I really want to understand is that if there is an independent lawyer and he has even a small practice, maybe there are two juniors or four juniors, and he's practicing, even a single lawyer practicing, even there they can create efficiency, right? So there are small things that we teach. For example, is that, for every contract you must create a input collection form, which you can create on a Google form. So if you are going to ask somebody that, okay, uh, here is a franchise agreement draft, okay, but you have a question form for format for that, you just pass on the Google form, they fill it up, the information comes in one place in writing,
Absolutely.
Or even if you're going to take up a divorce matter, or I don't know, anywhere, any kind of matter, criminal matters, you can collect the information instead of sitting and listening to a person for 1 hour, which is also important, but do that after you have gone through the material. And I'm not saying don't talk to your clients, I'm saying collect the data, and then when you have everything written down, even the client had time to structure it in his head and write it down. Isn't it so much better?
Absolutely. You're right, Ramanuj. You're bang on there.
What else can an individual lawyer do?
I think first of all, we have to get away from the one-stop solution, technology as a one-stop solution, or automation as a one-stop solution that currently seems to be the buzzword. I'm not saying not to use technology or not to automate. I'm just saying that we need to get to understand where we are first, and then select the right way of automating. A very funny example here in terms of automation, and a very small little step that changed a lot for us, is that in one of our client matters, we had to send out bulk notices, legal notices, on behalf of the client to different customers and vendors, etc. Now, in that process, we would be getting a lot of inputs from their internal team, some from their legal team, some from their sales team, some from their procurement team, and everyone just randomly forwards messages or sends them through, without much thought, as to how we at our end are going to even compile it. Right. So every day, my team would spend about 2 to 3 hours in just bifurcating the legal notice, or the person to whom it has to be sent, and the teams that have sent various information in accordance with that, and try and link. It was more like a jigsaw puzzle, because if it's the same company, invariably the matters will be somewhat here and there linked. So it was a jigsaw puzzle. What it does is creates a lot of scope of error, right? We did it for about a week, and I raised my hands and I said, this is not happening. It is not possible to really effectively help you out or help myself out in this manner. So here's what we'll do. I gave them a naming convention. Every email that comes to us should have a certain naming convention, which will have the name of the matter, the team that is sending it to us, and what kind of information they're sending us, right? And that needs to come. If it's by email, that subject line has to have. If it is any document, I will not accept on email. It has to go directly into our virtual database, where the naming convention is already defined. You put it in the right boxes. And like that, we freed up 2 to 2.5 hours every single day,
Wow.
which could be utilized for this client or for anyone else, or just for doing their job better, right?
Wow.
So these are the kind of inefficiencies and leakages that we are unaware of. These are the kind of interruptions that we can certainly do without, but we will never know it unless we put our mind into it and understand what our day is filled up of. Like, if you just sit and analyze, like going back to what you were saying, how can an independent lawyer increase his or her efficiency for his team or for himself?
Right. Yeah.
You first sit down and try and look at what your week looks like, and what kind of things that you spend more time on, right? It could be that you spend about 3 hours a day just looking at emails and responding to them. It could be that you spend about 2 hours just talking to clients. It could be, something like this, that you sort your emails in a way and you spend 1 hour just for that. So let's understand. And then what kind of matters you look at? Are they transactional matters? Are they litigation matters? First thing is to sort your life, sort your matters into these buckets, and understand how much time you spend on each.
Right.
And then you get one step down into it. And just two criteria you have to remember whenever you are going to build a process. The first thing is that it has to add value to your client. The client has to be willing to pay for what what your output is, right? And therefore, it is important that everything you create is a step towards his objective being met, right?
Mm.
And second thing is some sort of transparency, or some sort of predictability in the process. Like, if somebody comes to you with a matter, you cannot say that, okay, I will look at it and I will respond when I will respond. That doesn't, that doesn't help at all, give any sort of a confidence. And even during the process, now it could be a matter that can take 1 week, it could be something, it could take one year. But during the process, there has to be some sort of predictability for the client, so they know where we are and when he can expect an output. So you have to look at value creation for the client from their point of view.
Right.
So to give you an example there, when we talk of value creation, things which are not so critical for a lawyer in terms of document, right? I'm not saying any job is less important. I'm just saying that in terms of the attention to detail required, maybe there are things like, for instance, an NDA, an MOU, or something called an OEM form, or a manufacturer authorization form, or such other forms and documents that that the sales team or your clients require if you're in an in-house role, that come to you, and you're not able to really look at it, not because it's not important, but because there is something else more critical which is lined up in your priority line. So they would normally wait, even if you're the fastest lawyer, I think, for 24 to 48 hours at the minimum to get something as basic as these documents. Right? Now, when I say create value for your customers, I want you to step out of your shoes and get into theirs, right? If it's an NDA, for instance, he is waiting on a sales call because the NDA is not signed, he cannot continue further discussions.
Yeah.
Right? And
can't afford that.
Yeah, so if you look at it from the client's perspective, 2 days is a long time. I mean, you would think that, oh, I have responded in 48 hours. Within 48 hours, I'm super fast. But from a client perspective, from the sales guy's perspective, maybe that the other side, that party, the signatory is gone away, right? So what could be done? What I have seen in the previous organization and what I have tried to inculcate in here in my team also is that the things which take supposedly less time but are very critical for the customer, for the client, we need to prioritize it or have a smaller team looking at it who can do it much faster, right? So then if you automate it, for instance, if you are in an organization, internally you are the lawyer, your in-house lawyer, this process can easily be automated. All that is needed is a questionnaire to be filled online, and something is churned out, an NDA is churned out, and it can be digitally signed. So some of you may ask, what about stamp duty? Now that again is a calculated risk. Depends, again I'm repeating, look at it from the risk point of view, from the client point of view also. How big is a risk if 100, 200 NDAs are getting signed globally in one organization in one day? How many of them will actually be called upon as evidence in the court of law? And if they are called upon also, does it negate the document? The answer is no. Right? So spending 2 or 3 days to get the stamp paper, to get it physically signed, to wait for the lawyer to get some time and to review it and go about negotiating it for 5 days, does it make sense? Is it adding value to the customer, to the client? The answer is no. So these are the kind of decisions that you can actually take only if you know the point of view of your client on what he as well. So that is one critical thing. The other thing is to look at, and if you want me to give you an example from a practicing lawyer's point of view, simple things as incorporation of a company, right? I have, as an in-house lawyer, given this work to other law firms and waited for 15, 20 days to just wait for them to tell me that the application has been filed. It need not take that long, right? So now
this is the biggest complaint of in-house counsels with respect to lawyers, especially litigators, that they do not respond back, they do not give updates, that they have to be chased too much to get any kind of feedback. And I had done a survey of 200 in-house counsels on this, and the outcome of that survey was that they said that one of the top things they look for in a lawyer is basically responsiveness. Okay, are they going to be Are they going to disappear in the middle of a matter? Suddenly they are not reachable on phone. Are they going to like be available when necessary? Are they going to communicate? Are they going to upload the order timely and not just say that how order has come and then just disappear and leave the lawyers to deal with it? So these are some of the issues that I think very clearly, if people can work on this, it is not only efficiency, it is also a great deal of
Client satisfaction.
business sense, business satisfaction, and people will work with you simply because of that. Now
Correct.
that I said that, I also realize that a lot of lawyers do not do it because they are not efficient. Because they're like, how am I going to respond to all these calls and all these messages, and how can I? Because they have no process, they have no system, they haven't thought of it like a system. They only think of it as their personal responsibility to pick up every call and respond to every message, which is not possible, right? So as your organization grows, as your company grows, you will definitely need to build processes and create teams also which will take care of these processes. So if you can talk a little about the importance of a team in any process, because I understand that if you just have a process and not the right people in the process,
I'm sorry, I'm losing you a bit. I think you said something about team.
could you? I was talking about that. Having processes is one thing, but having the right team to run that process, isn't it?
Yes, of course. The right team. So I will take you back to the previous example I was giving of a centralized, specialized team looking after certain matters. Um, how can we be sure that that team is better than your 12-year, 15-year experienced lawyer? Why is that team better? So when you look at a team, always make sure that you're not looking at you've not put overqualified people or underqualified people,
Sure.
firstly.
Hmm.
Secondly, it is important that they are adequately trained. They have to be trained in what they are required to be doing. And that is where playbooks come into picture, textbooks come into picture. They need to be very sure of every step that they are taking. So you're giving them, a limited scope, but they are going deep, deep down into that. And hence, yes, the output that they bring in will be better than your the what the 12-year experience or 15-year experience lawyer will give you, particularly for that matter. So training and having the right people involved. The third thing I would say, from if you are a team lead, it is your responsibility to ensure that you delegate the right kind of matters to the right people. And it's a very funny example from my earlier years when I was just getting into the commercial aspects of an organization. Um, and in responding to an RFP, just because an RFP is more like worded like a legal document, it's dumped directly onto legal, right? Everything in there need not be legal and is not legal. But it is purely sent to legal just because it's worded like a legal document. And very early into my career, I remember spending 2 days on a section which was not something that I needed to even look at. It was a technical section, and it was, of course, worded very, very legally. So I spent 2 days in trying to analyze every single word in that, just to come out of that and understand that, oh, this is not even my matter, right? So the problem is that if I wasted 2 days, my manager wasted 2 days, and we wasted 2 days for business. So if it is not rightly delegated, you will never get the right output. So that those are the kind of errors that, or wastages that you need to be eliminating to get the right process. And when you're talking about a team, these are the kind of things that you need to be taking care of.
Okay. If you can explain how to build a playbook and how it helps, I think that's a very important. In
Uh,
contract playbook and other playbooks, you must be having many different. What are the different kind of playbooks that one may have?
you can make a playbook for anything. Playbook just gives some sort of a guidance. I mean, it's more like like a cheat sheet, if we may call it that. So there may be frontline lawyers who are negotiating, on the fly. They're supposed to sit down and say yes or no to a certain position. And if as a corporate, you already know the kind of positions that you can take and the fallback positions that you can take, that's where playbook comes into picture. In the playbook, you can make a playbook, for instance, for a mm, for a service provider agreement, or for a shareholder agreement, right? For a shareholder agreement, let's take that. There are various clauses. And again, one thing is extremely critical here, which I feel many of us as lawyers miss out, is whenever we are asked for a draft, or whenever we are asked for a playbook, or whatever positions, the first question that we should be asking is, who are we representing? Right? The positions will drastically change based on that. But unfortunately, I don't know if it's just me, but I really have seen very, very few lawyers who have come up with that question every time I ask for a draft or a template. And I wait for that question. I'm actually hoping that somebody will ask me that, but I will have to give that information out and say that, look, I know that you're used to VCs, but we are representing the founder now. And I know you're usually, on the side of the service providers, but we are the customer this time. So, and everything changes based on who you are representing. So remember that as a critical part when you're creating playbooks. So playbooks are, like I said, nothing but a compilation of important positions and fallback positions. For instance, indemnity, for instance, warranty, for instance, your term of contract or confidentiality. It could be any of these. Typically, you would want to create playbooks for individual type of contracts and not as a whole for the company, because just like it changes with who you are, it also changes with what you're negotiating. So if you are looking at say a procurement agreement, your terms of confidentiality and indemnity and all may be different from when you are it's an inbound contract, or if it's a licensing contract. So keep that in mind. So that's just a high level view of how you can start building a playbook. Look at repetitive things that you've been doing or even want to have. I mean, it's not necessary that you should have learned everything from the past. You can even create a playbook to dictate the kind of positions you want to take in the future. So both ways.
If you can throw some light on, in-house counsels trying to create more inefficiency. So, what are the usual areas of inefficiency, and where can they create efficiency?
Okay, so I'll give you another example. Again, a funny one from where I come. This was from an in-house counsel's position. There were some litigation matters going on because of a product issue, and we were required to send out information requests to various departments. One of that department was the procurement team. And invariably, every time we send information requests to the procurement team, the responses would never come on time. Right? So it became like a joke or a frustration point that to the procurement team, you have to send one email, then you have to send 2 reminders, you have to make 4 calls, only then you get the input. So the smart idea that came to one of us was we should just automate the reminder processes. So it will save us a lot of time and we're done, right? And they can respond when they do, but we will just give them reminders more quickly and automate it so we don't waste time on it. So it is helping save a lot of our time, right? Unfortunately, this is not the right solution for this particular matter. Why? Because we never went into the core of the problem. Why is it that the procurement team is not responding on time? If somebody went one step deeper into that, which we eventually did, the problem was just that the way the legal team asked for the information, the format in which they asked, there were so many legal jargons according to them that they didn't know what you're asking for till the time you called them and you explained what is it that you want. So sometimes the solutions are as simple as this, and the inefficiencies are inbuilt purely because you've not understood the core problem. So that's one example. So when you go about looking at more sort of inefficiencies or the kind of leakages that can come up, uh, not really putting not really standardizing something which can easily be standardized. uh, Templates and playbooks are an example. If you can, I was giving you an example of a manufacturer authorization or a OEM authorization form. That's something that can easily be automated. There is nothing new that comes into picture every time an internal client comes with a request. Only thing that needs to be filled in is the name of the party to whom it is going. So that can be easily automated. You don't need to spend 2 days for that. Similarly, RFP process. A lot of RFPs take weeks and weeks of time to fill in. But if you notice closely, and this is something that has already been implemented, I have worked on all this earlier. If you look closely, the legal aspects, the corporate aspects, a lot of product related positions, even if the product positioning is different or the solution positioning is different, but a lot of the positions that the corporate takes, those are all standard, right? Or we will have multiple positions as per the playbook that we can give this or this based on what solution we are offering. So these are all very easily, we can standardize them. It saves a lot of time. During an RFP process, there are many questions that come from the sales team, which can be answered, which we get tired of answering repeatedly, giving the same answer to multiple people. That can just form a booklet, an FAQ.
Absolutely.
Right?
So one of the
It's not as
very
if they want to. It's just that
yeah. It's just that you are not thinking about it. You're not aware. So, for example, one of my students who's a divorce lawyer, she created a booklet which is like her own book. It's like looks like a book, which is on how to collect evidence for divorce matters, and she gives it to everybody who walks into her chamber.
brilliant.
It just reduces our work. Otherwise, it's a very difficult conversation to be have. What is evidence? What can you give it to me? So once people have it builds authority also, and that book works. It can be passed along to other people and
Correct.
created. But it's great that that's I think a great example of some processes. What else could be done in a law firm to make things more efficient?
Um, I think most of the time it is about unutilized people, underutilized people, um, overdone work. Sometimes law firms tend to overdo their work. I mean, it could just be a summary on an
Yeah,
email.
sometimes it looks like sorry, I'm cutting you off, but sometimes I have seen a fair enough draft being like just changed by somebody because they have to justify their existence in the firm.
Yeah, correct. Or things like when a customer when a client asks for something, you go about taking 1 week to create to list case precedents, to put in your brief, to make a format and create a 5-page 6-page response, while all that the customer will the client will look at it and say is that, can you just explain in plain English what it is, and you summarize in a paragraph on the email. That's it, right? So that's what sometimes I think we are under pressure by ourselves and by the kind of expectations that we feel are on us as lawyers, to overdo things, to overcook, to overanalyze. We could possibly avoid a lot of inefficiencies by just remaining to the point. And I will again and again go back to what I said earlier. It is always important to stay focused on who you are servicing. What is it that they want? See value from their side. So if you see value from their side, you will know that most valuable to them is to quickly understand the advice, rather than go through 6 pages and still be under a flux as to what is it that the lawyer really said. So
Yeah.
think like that.
Right. So if you can throw some light on this, if somebody wanted to learn more about efficiency in a law firm setting or in a in-house setting for that matter, what could one refer to? Are there resources on this?
Uh, there are some books that you should certainly be reading, like Richard Susskind. He's a great author on the future of where this profession is headed. You could actually look at Six Sigma as a process kind of an approach, though it applies mostly to manufacturing. Maybe see the similarities of where you can link it to legal efficiencies. So that's possibly where one can start. But I would feel that with your own experience, if you just look deep down into what you do and try and break it into steps, make a flow chart of what you do, what this leads to, what this leads to, I think 10 on 10 times, I would say you will certainly find certain steps that are repetitive. If you sit in a room with 10 lawyers and just discuss the same transaction as to how they do it and how you do it, you would find that there are some best practices that you could inculcate. There are some efficiencies that you could teach them, stuff like that. So it's important to have a very close look on what you do, break it down into steps, and then take a closer look, and always keep a view on what you're trying to achieve, who you're servicing, what is valuable to them. And avoid repetition, avoid any sort of repetition, avoid any sort of leakage, any sort of
I
waiting.
think measuring and what I'm getting again and again
Yeah,
is the measuring is the most important thing, and
correct.
I think lawyers are not always good at measuring what is going on. I think
Absolutely.
that is the one area of challenge they will face.
Yes, I was just going to come to that. After all this is done, the most critical thing for you to be able to set a process is to have some sort of measurability. Unless you can measure it, you can never know, or you will never be able to show that it has improved or become better. And where can measurability come in? If you're an in-house lawyer, it's easily ease of doing business. For instance, instead of doing the same contract with one customer every year, can you spend a couple of months extra and do a multi-year contract already? Why not? Um, for instance, again, from an in-house point of view, if you have a list of contracts, when you have a channel partner kind of a setting, it's possible, and it happens most of the time, that almost all of them expire around the same time, right? Is it possible for you to just look at it and try and first take it out of the critical year end and quarter end kind of timelines, and bring it somewhere in the middle of the months, where there is some spare time for you and for the others to spend on? Secondly, is it possible to get spread these contract expiries over a period of say 15 days, so that you have a fix on, say March or February first week is when most of these contracts end. You prepare already, 1 month ahead of time, and then you're not really missing out on any sort of renewals or anything. So if you measure the number of contracts that expired without renewal, or were not ready before the contract, before the sales team needed it, over after the process was initiated and before the process was initiated, see, that's one way of already knowing that whether your process is effective or not, right? So things like that, and get feedback and try and regularly, and also control. Once you set a process in, it is important that you keep checking that people are actually using that process, and it requires constant monitoring to ensure new inefficiencies are not creeping in, and you keep ironing them out. So without measuring, yes, there is absolutely no point in having a process in place.
Okay. Uh, what are the 2, 3 small tasks any lawyer could do today to just make their processes better?
First thing is to, I think, organize their inboxes. Almost all of us have about 50, 100 messages. Whenever you look
I
at
have
an
a few
email,
thousand.
yeah, at least 50. So whenever you look at an email, know whether you have to act on it, you have to either delete it, or you have to defer it with a timeline of when you will do it. So that, I mean, I have found myself doing it many a times, that I keep looking at one email 4 or 5 times, again and again, opening it and not really doing anything about it. So that's a waste of time already. So if you can actually get a discipline of managing your inbox in a way that the minute you open the email, it's either to do or to defer to a particular time or to delete. That's it. That is one, it actually frees up a lot of time. And secondly, as a practice, start thinking from the client's point of view. Start thinking what will add value to them, and not just from your point of view. And
These things are a
thirdly,
little hard to implement. They're like, you never know whether you're doing it right or not. But if
um, you
maybe you could give something that they can actually implement, something more, uh, actually something they can do it today.
okay, so if you're doing it today, then maybe could you just start with making a list of things that you do, and for 1 week try and keep that record and
I
see
think
what are
that's a
the
great idea.
things,
Yeah.
what
Like
are the
whenever you're doing something, write it down on your calendar. This is what I did.
this is what I did, and then over a week you will kind of know what took most of your time,
How are you spending your time?
right? How are you spending your time, and from that you pull out the kind of things that you think can be standardized, that you
Yeah,
think can be implemented.
there
So
may be things that you're doing so much which is not adding any value. Then you at least know not to do them, or if you're going to still do them, they have to be automatic, right?
correct. And start with some setting some level of measurability for you. So as soon as you start thinking of a process, along with that, start thinking of a measure. So that as within a week, 10 days, 20 days, when you start changing things, you're able to measure it back and say that 2 weeks ago it was this, and now I'm able to do this much more. So these two go hand in hand, I would say.
Hmm. Uh, if you can throw some light on where do you think like things are headed in terms of law firms? Because in a way, I would say that law firms that do not continuously work on efficiency will fall behind, and definitely will be completely upturned by more savvy firms which have a higher level of efficiency. That does not mean that legal talent has no value, etc. But simply that a firm which is more or a practice which is uh, more efficient is more likely to be able to afford those highly talented lawyers, right? Because they are more efficient, so they are going to save more money there. And it's very hard to battle this, although a lot of people feel that no, we are great lawyers, therefore nothing is going to take away from us. No doubt about that. Uh, but at the same time, do you feel that there is value in not being efficient? Like there are is what if I say that I don't want to bring processes, I want to do this as a form of art.
If somebody is paying you for that art, I
Sorry
think
for
that comes later on when you are already a known name, and people will just we will just come to you just because you are an artist. I don't know. I don't really subscribe to that. I don't think that's something that
that's doable,
I
not
foresee.
doesn't make sense, right?
It doesn't make sense to me.
Even in either way it will put a lot of restrictions on, and it is not very doesn't make you competitive at all. So what are Indian law firms doing generally today to make themselves more efficient?
I think what everyone has pretty much done is practice management. They have kind of automated, but it, and they believe that they have brought in automation by having a process management system, uh,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
billing system, a
Doing
timesheet
system.
system in place. That is practice management is not the same as automation. When we say technology in the legal department or for lawyers, it goes way beyond. It starts right from even knowledge management. For instance, in law firms you will see typically different teams doing similar work, but just because one is a corporate team, one is a litigation team, they don't know what they are doing. you know what each team is doing. Now that is not required. We should be able to collect, have the benefit of collective knowledge and share it. So that's one thing that will certainly go a long way in creating a better, more informed and collaborative law firm atmosphere. The second thing is, of course, the use of technology, and there again the same rules apply. I mean, whether it's a law firm or an in-house practitioner, the same rules apply. You cannot get into technology till you know exactly what is it that you do and bring some discipline into that. So yes, technology is the need of the hour even for a law firm. Measurability from the client's perspective. So today it is not just about the time you spend on a client matter. A client, today's typical client is not ready to pay you for your time by the hour. That I think those days are gone. It will have to be for an output. And if that's the case, it is in your interest to get the max out of the minimum number of resources and minimum investment, right? So again, you are forced to think more in terms of increasing the efficiency. Even if you think that even if it is because of an external force that the client is not ready to pay you for the number of hours, so be it. But that's another reason why you should be looking at an output based approach rather than a time based approach. So yeah, these are the kind of things that the law firms are being forced to think of nowadays, and they are slowly but steadily moving towards it. Yeah, even litigation for that matter, which traditionally was a very high touch kind of a legal servicing solution. Even that, with various online dispute resolution forums coming up, and in today's times with COVID, I mean, even the courts moving into a online mode, even that is becoming more and more technology oriented, process oriented.
Right.
I think how much ever we may think litigation is a high touch model and a very specialized field, there are even more reasons for us, or opportunities for us to automate
Create
that.
efficiency, automate, and create
Absolutely.
processes. Absolutely. Litigation, the more complex the project is, more you need processes. And because litigation is so complex, having processes would lead to much better outcome.
Right.
So, let's take some questions. Anybody has any questions? Let's open up for some questions. Can you share some examples of, there's a question here. There are, can you share if there are some examples of this that you have done in your own law firm? You run a law firm, right?
Yes, yes, I do. So right now I'm just in the process stage because it's just a month, 1 year and a half since I've been into my law firm. So yes, I'm still in my process stage. I have created checklists and playbooks and even SOPs on how fast a client needs to be responded to. We do a lot of due diligence, so a quick process for due diligence. And I have clients who have actually commented that the previous law firm used to take, that was the difficulty. It would be like a black hole. They would take anything from 15 days to 3 months to finish a due diligence, and we are by default churning it out within 15 days, not because there is any lesser quality, but because there is a very clear-cut process around what we are looking for and how we get to it. So yes, so that's the kind of processes that I have started to bring in for efficiency.
Super.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything about, if anybody wants to ask a question, you can raise your hand or you can let me know in private chat and I'll open it for you. There's a question which I have received on chat. Somebody's asking, are there professionals who work on this with law firms? Can if somebody wants to work on this as a profession, what do they have?
You mean whether to outsource the process part or do it internally? Is that the question?
No, it's like, are there professionals who work on creating more efficiency in law firms, or working with these processes and creating these processes, consultants essentially, I think.
Yeah, there are. I mean, all these.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I can hear
So I said, all the large consultants that do create such processes.
you.
There are. I mean, I'm happy to help out in an informal way if you need to just understand what your organization needs. But yeah, if you go to any Deloitte and PwC, lots of organization are working on even specifically legal process efficiency controls and optimizations. But honestly, I would recommend that this is again a question of outsource versus in-source. It is important that there are legal professionals involved in this process. It is important that your internal teams are equally involved in this process creation, only because ultimately they have to own it, they have to run with it. It cannot be something which is totally external. So I would rather treat it as a from inside the organization, you take some outside help rather than the other way around.
Understood. But you might benefit from some guidance, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So great, fantastic. I think I don't see any questions. Anybody wanting to come on mic? There are some questions. Asking if I apply for internship with you.
Sorry,
Would you like to comment on that?
I didn't hear
How
that.
to apply for internship with you? Someone is asking how to apply for internship.
That is
Yeah,
if you can just forward that. You can reach out to me separately, please.
sure. Okay. Uh, would you like to recommend any books of Richard Susskind? Somebody asking.
The most popular one, Tomorrow's Lawyers. I think that is the one that.
Tomorrow's okay. There's a question on any tech tools available. Sushil is asking in the market to do these things.
Lots of tech tools available, Sushil. You can look at. I'm sure you know already the Manupatras and the SC Online kind
So
of tool.
those are basic,
There
but
is so those are basic. There is Voltage and ECLM for contract management and Contractum for contract management approaches that you will take. Templates and customizations. There's something called Rocket Lawyer or something like that. I think
Rocket Lawyer is there.
yeah. And then for dispute resolution, of course, like I mentioned, CODR and what's that, 360, some pre-solve
Resolve
3,
360.
yeah, pre-solve 360 for online dispute resolution. So yeah, there are enough and more tools available. You will have to really understand what fits your organization the best.
Yeah, and there are different things that are done by different software. There's no
Absolutely.
one software which does everything.
It isn't one and it isn't one size fits all also, so you have to be careful in trying to choose the right tool for you.
Great. We are 3 minutes past 4. Unless there are more questions, and we can take a parting message from you, and then we can wrap this up. I don't see any other questions. So, Anita, you want to share any final parting words?
Yeah, but I think this was very exciting and interesting for me also to have this sort of a forum. I think if there's one thought that I would want to leave you all with, it is to just drill down into what you do. Drill down into what you do and try and identify patterns and repetitions. That will be the first thing for you to increase the efficiencies. And then you take it forward with all the tools that I just mentioned. But if there's only one thing that you can do, then do this. Just you look at your week and see what you're repeating, see a pattern, and it will emerge.
Right. That's actually a very important activity to look at your own calendar and try to understand that how you're spending your time. It's one of the best things anybody can do. Thank you so much, Anita. Really appreciate you taking out time for this. The lockdown is over now, and I mean, partially over.
Yeah.
And I know everybody is very busy and working. And thank you so much for in the middle of all of that making time for this session.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, everybody
Thanks.
who joined. Have a great day.
Great day. Thank you. Bye bye.